The man in row 12 is wearing a bright red jersey, but his eyes are shut tight. The California sun beats down on the back of his neck, reflecting off the empty plastic cups littering the concrete. Around him, 40,000 people are supposed to be witnessing a miracle. This is the first knockout match of the most ambitious World Cup in human history. It is a moment of pure, unadulterated sporting theater where every pass should carry the weight of a nation. Instead, the only audible sound in the stadium is the rhythmic, hollow thud of a ball being kicked aimlessly into the sky. This was the moment the tournament was supposed to catch fire and announce itself to the world. But as the clock ticked past the 80-minute mark, the world wasn't watching in awe. It was checking its collective watch. Why did the world's biggest sporting stage just become a high-priced sedative? The answer isn't found on the pitch, but in the boardroom. To understand the boredom of the present, we have to look at the greed of the past. FIFA sold us a dream of inclusivity, but they delivered a product of dilution. We were told that expanding the World Cup from 32 teams to 48 was about the global growth of the game. We were told it was about giving smaller nations a seat at the high table. Canada and South Africa were the poster children for this new era. For Canada, the history was a desert. Before this tournament, they had played 6 World Cup matches across their entire history. They lost all 6. They didn't just lose, they failed to even find the back of the net. For South Africa, the story was one of perennial frustration. A nation with a deep love for the sport that had never once tasted the air of the knockout rounds. On paper, this was a fairy tale. 2 underdogs, 2 nations that had suffered for decades, finally meeting in a win-or-go-home scenario. It should have been a celebration of the underdog spirit. It should have been the soul of football. Instead, it was a tactical graveyard. When you take 2 teams whose entire identity is built on the sheer relief of being there, you don't get a clash of titans. You get a Mexican standoff where no one is willing to draw their weapon. South Africa walked onto that pitch with a single, devastatingly effective goal: survival. They didn't come to play football, they came to prevent it. They sat deep in a low block that was so compact it looked like a structural wall. They dared Canada to break them down, knowing full well that Canada lacked the creative spark to do so. It was a game played in slow motion. The intensity that defines World Cup knockout football was replaced by a creeping, suffocating fear. The fear of making the one mistake that would send them home. The fear of ruining the miracle. We saw it in the numbers. We saw it in the way the ball spent most of its time in the middle third of the pitch, being recycled by defenders who were too terrified to play a vertical pass. This wasn't just a bad game. It was a predictable outcome of a broken system. The reports from the ground didn't use the usual adjectives of thrilling or tense. They used words like sluggish, sloppy, and unwatchable. South Africa's Ronwen Williams performed heroically, making save after save from half chances that should have been buried. Mbukazi made a clearance off the goal line to deny Jonathan David what seemed like a certain goal. These were individual moments of brilliance, yes, but they were flashes of lightning in a very dark, very still night. The game was a grind. It was a 90-minute exercise in breath-holding. Even the introduction of Canada's crown jewel, Alphonso Davies, couldn't break the spell. He came off the bench in the 75th minute, a superstar returning from a long injury layoff. The crowd rose to its feet, desperate for a reason to shout. Davies injected a burst of pace, a few flashes of the talent that has made him a household name at Bayern Munich. But even he looked bogged down by the surrounding mediocrity. The pitch felt small, the air felt heavy. The game moved toward its inevitable conclusion, a goalless draw and the lottery of penalties. That is exactly what South Africa wanted. It was their only path to glory. They weren't playing for the win, they were playing for the coin toss. FIFA's leadership will tell you that the expansion was a success because it allowed these two teams to reach this stage. They will point to the television ratings in Johannesburg and Toronto. They will show you the spreadsheets. But they won't talk about the quality of the product they are selling. They won't talk about the fans who paid hundreds of dollars to sit in the sun and watch 22 men refuse to take a risk. This is the hidden cost of the 48-team format. When you widen the gates of the tournament, you don't just let in more teams, you let in more fear. You create a bracket where the early knockout rounds are populated by teams that are simply happy to have escaped the group. In a 32-team tournament, the winnowing process is brutal. Only the elite and the truly exceptional underdogs survive. In a 48-team tournament, mediocrity is not just tolerated, it is mathematically encouraged. Think about the sheer scale of what FIFA has done. They increased the number of matches from 64 to 104. That is 40 extra games. 40 extra opportunities to sell broadcast rights. 40 extra opportunities to fill stadiums with expensive beer and overpriced merchandise. The math is simple, and it has nothing to do with the offside rule. More games equal more money. FIFA is projected to bring in billions more in revenue from this cycle than the last. They have turned the World Cup into a marathon of attrition, banking on the fact that we are so addicted to the brand that we will watch anything with the FIFA logo on it. Even if that anything is a 90-minute stalemate between two teams terrified of their own shadows. The expansion was marketed as a gift to the developing football world. It was presented as a humanitarian effort to democratize the sport. But look at the reality. The extra slots were distributed to federations in a way that guaranteed political support for the current leadership. It was a transaction. Votes were traded for spots. Power was consolidated through the promise of participation. And while the bureaucrats in Zurich celebrate their bank balances, the sport itself is being hollowed out from the inside. We are losing the prestige of the World Cup. We are losing the feeling that every single game is a clash of the absolute best. When the first knockout match of the tournament feels like a midweek second division stalemate, something has gone horribly wrong. The game did have an ending, though. Because football is a cruel and beautiful game, it decided to provide a moment of theater just as the credits were about to roll. In the 92nd minute, a desperate, speculative cross floated into the South African box. A defender, exhausted by 90 minutes of mental strain, failed to clear it cleanly. The ball dropped. It found the chest of Steven Eustachio at the top of the area. He didn't think. He didn't hesitate. He let the ball fall and struck a volley that was so pure it seemed to hum through the air. It tucked inside the far post. The net bulged. The Canadian bench exploded onto the field. The South African players collapsed where they stood, some of them literally burying their faces in the grass. Canada had won. They were through to the last 16 for the first time. It was a historic moment. It was a heroic moment, as Jesse Marsh later called it. But we have to be honest, that goal was a lie. It was a beautiful, shimmering lie that masked the 91 minutes of failure that preceded it. One brilliant volley doesn't change the fact that the match was a disaster for the sport. It doesn't change the fact that thousands of people were bored to tears by a game that is supposed to be the pinnacle of human achievement. FIFA will use that goal in every highlight reel. They will use it to justify the expansion. They will say, "Look at the drama. Look at the emotion." They will use Eustachio's celebration to paper over the cracks in their bloated, money-hungry system. They want you to remember the volley. They want you to forget the nap. This is the central tension of the modern game. We want the underdog story. We want to see nations like Canada and South Africa rise up and challenge the status quo. We want the world to feel smaller and more connected through the ball. But when the format is designed specifically to maximize profit over competitive integrity, everyone loses. The players lose because they are forced into a style of play that prioritizes not making mistakes over creating beauty. The fans lose because they are being sold a premium product that is increasingly being diluted with filler. And the sport loses because its most sacred ritual, the World Cup knockout round, is being turned into a volume-based business. This wasn't a series of isolated mistakes. It was exactly how the system was designed to work. FIFA didn't accidentally make the tournament boring. They made it too big to be consistently exciting. They traded the intensity of the elite for the safety of the masses. They built a machine that produces a high volume of matches, knowing that a certain percentage of them will be duds. They don't care if Canada versus South Africa is a snooze fest, as long as the sponsors are happy and the checks clear. They have calculated that our loyalty to the idea of the World Cup is stronger than our distaste for the reality of the football on display. They are betting on our nostalgia to fund their expansion. The problem is that once you lose the prestige, you can't just buy it back. The World Cup used to feel like a rare, precious diamond. By expanding it, FIFA is turning it into a bag of gravel. There is more of it, sure. It covers more ground. But it doesn't shine the same way. When you look at the upcoming schedule for this tournament, you see more matches like this one. More matchups between teams that are fundamentally designed to defend. More games where the goal isn't to win, but to not lose. If this is the future of the knockout rounds, we are in for a very long, very quiet month of football. The group stages gave us hope. They were chaotic and unpredictable. But the knockouts are where the truth comes out. The knockouts are where the lack of quality is laid bare under the brightest lights. We have to ask ourselves what we want the World Cup to be. Do we want a global festival where everyone gets a trophy for showing up? Or do we want the ultimate test of sporting excellence? FIFA has clearly made its choice. They have chosen the path of least resistance and most revenue. They have decided that 100 boring games are better than 64 great ones, because 100 games sell more commercials. They are hollowed out. They are a bank with a stadium attached. And the victims are the fans who still believe that this game is about more than just the bottom line. The image of that fan asleep in the sun stays with me. It is a more powerful indictment of FIFA than any investigative report or financial audit. It is the physical manifestation of a product that has lost its soul. You can't manufacture passion. You can't force drama through expansion. Drama comes from the stakes. It comes from the clash of different philosophies. It comes from the feeling that you are watching something that cannot be replicated anywhere else. When you turn the World Cup into a grind, you kill the very thing that made it special. You turn a miracle into a chore. Canada will move on. They will play their next match with the same grit and determination. Their fans will celebrate, and they should. For them, this is a mountain peak they have spent a lifetime climbing. But for the rest of us, the ones watching from the outside, the view from the top is looking increasingly cloudy. We are seeing a tournament that is struggling under its own weight. We are seeing a governing body that is more interested in the number of teams than the quality of the play. We are seeing the first symptoms of a disease that could eventually kill the magic of the World Cup for good. The first knockout match was supposed to be a celebration. It was supposed to be the moment the world stopped and looked at the pitch. Instead, it was a warning. It was a signal that the expansion has a price, and we are the ones paying it. We are paying it with our time. We are paying it with our attention. And we are paying it with the slow, steady erosion of our love for the game. FIFA has built a monument to its own ambition, but they forgot to make sure the foundation was solid. They forgot that the game belongs to the players and the fans, not the accountants. As the sun sets over the stadium, the fans begin to file out. They are talking about the goal. They are replaying Eustachio's volley in their minds. The adrenaline of the late winner has temporarily wiped away the memory of the preceding 90 minutes. But the boredom is still there, lurking in the shadows. It is waiting for the next match, and the one after that. The invoice for FIFA's expansion has finally arrived. The question is whether the game can afford to pay it. The stadium is quiet now. The red jerseys are gone. The only thing left is the trash blowing across the empty seats and the nagging feeling that we've been sold something that isn't quite what it seems. We are watching the world's greatest tournament being stretched until it snaps. The silence is the loudest thing in the room. FIFA wanted more. They got exactly what they asked for. Is this the new normal? Only the empty seats know. The game is changing, not for the better.